Good morning. It's a long-standing tradition here in Paw Paw that during this service, the speaker be someone that has served our nation. Because of that tradition, I need to share with you that I am not a veteran. And I say that with great regret. It's among one of the greatest regrets of my life. For I truly believe those that serve, and those that have served, are among our nation's greatest asset. They are the ones that signed that blank check made payable to the United States of America in an amount up to, including their lives. Who signs such a check? 2 weeks ago, we recognized those that are serving on active duty with the Armed Forces Day. Every day around this world, we have U.S. service members risking their lives for us. You, me, all of us. It's a dangerous world. A few weeks ago, United States service members were killed in faraway places like Somalia and Syria. Armed Forces Day is a very important day. In November, we recognize our veterans with Veterans Day. They are the ones that at one time in their life, they signed that blank check. We are who we are as a nation because of our veterans. Veterans Day is a very important day. Today, Memorial Day, is a very different day. Today, we come together, active duty service members, veterans, and civilians, to honor those that have been killed serving our nation in the armed forces. Killed, young men and women, for us, for you, for me. How do we wrap our heads around that? 3 years after the Civil War, our people of that time were still trying to figure out how they wrapped their heads around all those men and women that were killed during that war. And they came up with Decoration Day. That was a day that our people of that generation went out to the cemeteries and decorated the graves and tombstones with flowers. 50 years after that, our people of another generation, those coming out of the First World War, were trying to wrap their heads around all the young men and women that were killed. What do? We have to honor those that we can never welcome home, that are killed. They reflected on Decoration Day, and that's where we first get Memorial Day, because they wanted to recognize those that had been killed in that war and all the other wars. And so here we are 100 years later. And how many other wars and how many more men and women have been killed? Where will we be? Where will this nation be in another 100 years? During the parade and down here at the park, I took particular notice of a couple of friends of mine. These two men have a lot in common. They're both Marines. As Marines, they will have a lot in common. They both went through the Marine Corps recruit depot in San Diego. Many years separated the times they went through. Both of them also went to a war, one to Vietnam, one to Iraq. The first friend that I'm thinking about is Steve Haddad, and everybody knows Steve. Steve went through the recruit depot in 1967. 50 years he's been a Marine. My other friend is Patrick Boschke. Patrick went through the depot in San Diego and shortly thereafter was in Iraq. Something that I've been told, that when Marines go through their boot camp, they forge some of the strongest friendships and relationships that they can ever hope for. Steve went off to Vietnam as a combat soldier, got 3 Purple Hearts and awarded the Navy Cross. But I'm sure as he stands here today, he thinks of those 2 closest friends that he made in San Diego that went to Vietnam and were killed. I can't imagine what's going through his mind today. Patrick's closest friend in San Diego was a young man by the name of Phil Frank. Phil joined the Marine Corps after he watched that second plane slam into the Twin Towers on 9/11. Shortly after infantry school, Phil went to Iraq. Phil probably wasn't a Marine for even a year before he was hunted down and killed by a sniper. Killed by a sniper. Phil's parents, they're left with a shrine in their home for their son. And in his honor, they started a foundation, the Heart of a Marine. But you understand, that's what we're talking about with these men and women that are killed for us, for our nation. They're our children. They're someone's son or daughter. I'm standing just feet away from a Gold Star mother, Gold Star family. Gabriel DeRue was one of us, Pawpaw. He was killed for his nation, for you, for me, for all of us. I'm so sorry. My heart goes out to these young men and women, these sons and daughters, because so many of them were killed as teenagers. How many, I mean, when you think about it, they never had a chance to love, get married, have children, to live any kind of life that they thought about living. Think about what makes you happy. They probably never experienced that. Think of this concept of time. All of you can relate to that. How years can pass you by. 10, 20, 30, 50 years can go by. And it's like what just happened. Think of those of you that have children. No matter how old they get, they're still your baby. No matter how old your adult child gets. I have been fortunate. I have 3 children that are adults. They're young adults. This has caught up to me in a way I don't understand. My son Drew is a United States Marine. I am so proud. I don't see him as the man that he has become. I see my boy. My boy. My bear cub is deployed overseas right now. But I know there will be a day where I get to welcome him home. That's what today is about. Those that we cannot welcome home. Think about that concept of time in this great nation of patriotism that we've seen over times, and those that we cannot welcome home. Think what you know about the Revolutionary War. Of course, that was a time of great patriotism. How else could we have had the courage to stand up and declare our independence and fight for our freedom? Since 1776, we are unconquered. We are unconquered for a reason. Because of our patriotism. Because we gather like this on Memorial Day and honor those that were killed for us. Think of the Civil War. That was such a hard war because there were Americans on both sides. We welcomed our soldiers home. We honored those that were killed with Decoration Day. World War I, we get Memorial Day. World War II, Korea. Think of how our nation at that time was overwhelmed with patriotism. We welcomed our soldiers home. We continued having Memorial Days, honoring those that were killed. Every major newspaper had front page pictures of soldiers and civilians dancing in the streets. That's what it takes to remain unconquered. Patriotism, welcoming our soldiers home, honoring those that have been killed. Think of the wars that you specifically recall. The Gulf War, the war in Iraq, Afghanistan. We held Memorial Days. We welcomed those soldiers home. I've heard soldiers tell stories about walking through an airport in their uniform and that being one of the proudest moments of their life because of how receiving our society was to them. Remember I said, where will our nation be in another 100 years? That depends on our patriotism, our ability to have Memorial Days and honor those that have been killed for us. But before you get to that, you have to be able to recognize the significance of welcoming our soldiers home, rallying behind our service members. Think of the Vietnam War time. I wasn't even born then. I was a baby throughout that war, so I don't know. I just know what I've read and have been told. It wasn't the greatest times of patriotism in this nation. I've heard stories of soldiers coming from Vietnam as a combat soldier, perhaps getting 3 Purple Hearts and a Navy Cross, being told, do not leave that airport in the United States with your uniform on. You don't want to do that. Could you imagine a United States soldier hiding in a United States airport wanting to take their uniform off? We have to welcome those home when we have that opportunity. And so whenever I'm in a group like this, I take the opportunity. And think about that. We have Vietnam veterans in this crowd that remember 50 years ago as though it were yesterday. And so to our Vietnam veterans, I say to you, welcome home. Welcome home, and thank you for your service. And to those of you that may have just heard that for the first time, I'm so sorry. Do you see how that exemplifies and drives home the point of Memorial Day? that there are those we can't welcome home, and we will never be able to welcome them home. To the Giroux family, every day is Memorial Day. To those that have been killed for us, for we the people, God bless you. To those families that have suffered and endured so much, God bless you. God bless the United States of America, and thank you.